Hi, this is Francisco Gonzalez. I'm an indie point-and-click adventure game developer. I released a game called Rosewater, and you are listening to the Scene World podcast.
And it's the Scene World podcast, and I'm that guy, and he's that other guy. We're
Hello.
in this thing where we are.
Yeah, SeaWorld podcast.
That's right. In a minute, we are talking with the people behind Project Motor Racing.
Yep,
which is
that's
looking
true.
to have an amazing release in a couple of days.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Well, they are a spiritual successor to Project Cars. Yeah. And they were actually done by the same group of people, but under a different brand name.
Right.
And that this time the game will be using the engine of Farming Simulator, which we had as an interviewee before when they released the C64 version back then, and you actually recorded footage of it for the video version of that episode. So, right, and it's actually the first time that the engine is used for something else than Farming Simulator.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well,
right.
I mean, the engine for Farming Simulator is pretty, that's pretty in depth. There's a lot of
right.
There's driving, there's farm vehicles, there's grass and plant assets and sky stuff and whatever. There's all the things that you would need for a driving simulator. Really, it's just the Farming Simulator does it a little bit slower because you're not racing your combine harvesters. Although that would make a good game. I would enjoy racing a combine harvester. I think that would be fun.
I mean,
when I was a kid, they were building a highway next to my house. They knocked down all these woods, all these forests, and they were making a highway. And during the winter and in the off hours, they would just leave all the heavy machinery they had up there just sitting around, just kind of just parked. And my friends and I, who were 11 years old at the time, we'd go wandering around up there, and we discovered pretty quickly that most of these heavy machinery, bulldozers and backhoes and earth movers and all this stuff, they left the keys in the ignition. And so it didn't take long before my friends and I were basically playing dune buggy in bulldozers, unsupervised, at the age of 10.
Wow! Did you total?
We broke one.
Wow!
We broke a bulldozer.
Wow!
On purpose. I have to say, being children, we did know that we were breaking it.
Wow!
We didn't know that what we were doing would break it. It was more like a let's do this thing as a joke to break it, and it totally broke it. And we're like, it's a bulldozer. It's not supposed to break like that, but it did. So
wow.
But yeah, for legal reasons, this happened more than however many years ago. This is a long time ago.
Okay.
Not that, I mean,
True.
But yeah. But yes, that was enjoyable, and I would not mind a video game in which I raced bulldozers or backhoes or something.
Well, there's Forklift Racer.
Forklift Racer, okay, that's an interesting one, yeah.
All right. So, but before we talk to them, though, we have some news.
Okay.
So let me start.
Yeah, I don't have any news, so yeah, you go knock yourself out.
Right. Well, Milestone released a documentation video, Road to Screamer, where they actually talk about developing the reboot of Streamer.
Okay.
Well, they made documentation out of it already.
Yeah.
And it can be watched for free on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. Other news. Logicare.
Mm-hmm.
One of the guys that also does the digital talk, the German Discmag, sent me a link to a podcast fan art he did and released it on CSDB a while ago.
Nice. This is we'll put that on the screen right in front of
Yeah,
us.
sure, I
so
can
people
do that.
Can see
Yeah.
that. Yeah. It's it's a cool it's
Petsky.
Essentially it's sort of like a Petsky YouTube video of the podcast of our podcast. So that's pretty nifty. Look at me there with my gray hair and my
Right. And it's especially for the episode where we interviewed the creator of the database discmax.de.
right. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a cool which I still like that. I still need to get in touch with there's some things I needed to fix I wanted to fix on there, and I need to really get in touch with him still about that because
sure.
life picked up and I wasn't able to get that out in a timely manner.
All right.
That's awesome. Number one, thanks for the graphics. That was awesome. I love that. And number two, thank you for reminding me to email discmags.de about some
awesome
things that need to be corrected.
Awesome. Yeah, well, other news. The Spanish Amiga blog Amigatronics allows now guest news entries to be submitted.
Oh.
There's a submission form. And also the page is now fully translated into tons of languages. So they are going international now.
Nice.
They wrote to me, this year our blog has already surpassed 17,500 unique readers, and we expect to reach 20,000 before the end of the year.
Oh, wow.
So it's actually one of the big ones.
That is a big one, yeah. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Another big announcement, just to stay in the big thing, Atari announced the new mini console called Intellivision Sprint. And it has the original controllers in mini format there too. Yep. And here's the thing.
Oh yeah. Okay, you're talking.
Here's the thing, though. The first feedback from the people who were skeptic about the Amico, like Pat the NES Punk and so on, they are loving it. They are loving it.
I feel like there have been a series of misadventures with the Intellivision brand over the last 10 years, I guess. Starting with the Amico, because that is still, I don't know what the hell is happening with that. That's gone all over the place, and none of the people that were involved with it when we talked to them are involved with it anymore. And then Atari has purchased the Intellivision catalog and rights, but there's still something going on with the Amico that we don't know about. And then they started releasing the games on other platforms, and it's so weird. And now we're doing another Intellivision. Were the Intellivision games really that even that good? Like I don't know, and I don't know. I never had an Intellivision, and I never had a desire to have an Intellivision. But like, is is there that much of a demand for?
I mean, there
television
was, for
games?
example, B-47 Bomber with the voice box.
B-47 bomber.
I think it was B-47 Bomber.
B-47 was the Boeing
Or
strategy.
was it different? But it was something with B and then Bomber.
B-17 bomber.
What?
B-17 bomber is a video
Ah,
game. It's a flying
B-17
fortress.
Bomber.
Yeah. That's
For
got
the
that's got
television.
that has the voice synthesis cartridge. Yeah.
Exactly. And also interesting, they included um, a fan-made version for the Amico of Boulder Dash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's again though. My my opinion is not right on this one, so I'm not gonna offer it because it doesn't make any sense. It's just
Okay.
because something like Boulder Dash is not a. It's not that's not like an exclusive. The big thing about the Amico was that it was going to have these Intellivision exclusive games, right? These things
Especially in the sports field.
Right. That was the big thing about the Amico. Boulder Dash was a game on every goddamn thing that you could get. Like if there was a console, if there was a computer, Boulder Dash existed on it. So having Boulder Dash be like one of the draws on your console is not really. It's not really a draw because I can play that anywhere, literally anywhere. So Amico, the Amico had.
But it has B-17 Bomber, which is a
right.
killer.
But the Amico thing wasn't even the games. It wasn't even the Intellivision exclusive games.
And also Shark, for example.
Right. The big draw of the Amico, the big thing that they were pushing, if you remember Tommy Tallarico harping on this over and over, was the couch co-op, right? Was the multiplayer in the same room. Because so many things are, if you play a multiplayer game, it's on the internet now. You're sitting in a room by yourself playing with people that are elsewhere, which is fine and dandy, but there's something that to be said for sitting in a room with someone playing a game. So and that's kind of like what the big draw of the Amico was in having games that were specialized for that two-person sitting in one room.
Because many consoles didn't have that at that time.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure a lot of games now aren't even, multiplayer games aren't built for that. Like if okay, we'll pull out the No Man's Sky again because that's one of the few games that I play more than once. My brother and I will sometimes.
You play it all the time.
Yeah,
I see that sometimes.
Well, not all the time, just occasionally for like an hour. But like my brother and I will sometimes pop on there and play. If he was here, we couldn't do that. I mean, yeah, he could pull out his laptop, I could pull out mine, and we could play in a room. But we can't play on one machine on one screen. There's no split screen, option for it. There's no two-player option on one thing. So having games that are specialized for two-player on one device is kind of, and I guess a lot of console games, PlayStation or Xbox or whatever the hell else is out there, still do that to an extent because you're supposed to play with someone sometimes. But yeah, that was the big draw for it. But again, now we're doing an Intellivision.
And Pat from the NS Punk said, it's as horrible as the original. the disc feels as the original. The membrane keypad feels like the original.
That's the magic of of Intellivision.
That's true.
I guess that's kind of the draw. My complaint that the Intellivision, is that something people really crave. I mean, I guess if you grew up with that and you're used to the awful controller and stuff, that's a lot of people kind of want that back. They miss that.
True.
Even if it was a bad experience as a kid, they kind of
True.
want it again.
True. All right. Well, going back, some not so nice news.
Oh.
We mentioned 2 episodes ago that Rebecca Heinemann was having a fundraiser, a GoFundMe, for supporting her aggressive cancer treatment. Unfortunately, well, it was not successful, and she actually died a few days later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just for reference, she was a pioneer in the RPG world, especially, for example, Ultimate 3. She was a co-founder of Interplay, who also did the first commercial Star Trek games, amongst others. The last game where DeForest Kelly lent his voice, actually a few weeks before he died. And she was also the first competitive e-gaming winner. So she got some credit there. And she didn't get very old by nowadays standards. She died at 62.
Yeah. It's a shame. Cancer sucks, man. Cancer sucks.
Right. And it's if you go to the GoFundMe, it's incredible how, like, 5 days later, there was like, the chemotherapy was very successful, and we're looking bright road ahead and stuff. And 5 days later, she texts like, well, there's nothing more that can be done, and that is how quickly it became from
turn on a dime, man. That stuff. You know, if you're facing that thing, a lot of times chemo is just it's an extension. It gets you a little bit more time, but it doesn't fix anything. And
5 days is not a lot.
No, but there's times when you're looking at maybe a year, maybe 2 years, but it also the amount of the toll that chemo takes on you. Because basically they're poisoning you to kill the cancer.
Right.
So so you are being poisoned as well, and it does awful things to your immune system and to just your general, just everything, the way everything works in your body just kind of falls apart. And it's, and that stuff can turn on a dime. And if it decides, if something happens and it stops working, then you're not in a position to recover a lot of times.
Right.
So it's sucks, man. Cancer is fucking.
Yeah. Another tragic loss was actually the demo scener, Francia Brigitte, also known under the name Chosen Few. He was a musician and a music producer. He died at the age of 53. Yep.
From what? Do we know what?
No. At least I don't remember. Okay. But I will link to the memorial pages from 8-Bit Legends.
Cool.
To both of them. Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, other news. F1 26 is also dead. EA announced they will not be doing a full release next year because the community was not for it. Every year, a new installment of the F1 games was a bit too much.
Were we talking about that in this podcast? Like in this interview, weren't we talking about F1?
We did.
Yeah.
And they listened and they decided. Yeah, that is actually
it's our fault.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the article says EA is doing what fans want. So the solution is that the 2026 version will just be a DLC for the 2025 release, and the next reimagined game, totally new from the ground up,
I'm okay
will
with
be
that.
coming in 2027.
I'm okay with that, and I think even we talked about that in this interview.
We did.
I was saying that, like, you know, the incremental advances in computing power are not the same as they used to be. You know, I mean, they still exist, but it's not something that you can perceive often in like a game like this. So the advantage of buying a new version of a game every goddamn year just isn't there for me. I'd rather like buy a game and then have updates and DLC for a while, and then after a few years be able to get the new one. Because again, you know, a lot of times the new versions of the game don't take into account like what you've done in the old ones. You know, it doesn't carry over like your achievements or whatever else or whatever you've collected. You know, it's a whole new thing. I'd rather just be able to stick with what I've been playing, have some new content come in, and then like a year or two down the road,
new drivers, stuff.
Yeah. Right. And then a couple years down the road, when there have been some advancements that make this new version worth getting, then I'll get that new version. But as a general rule, if I'm just playing a game, I don't want to have to buy a new one in a year.
Right. Well,
yeah,
and
I'm okay with that.
And another news is iRacing finally released the new installment of NASCAR. So NASCAR 25 has been released.
A lot of racing news in this racing game podcast episode.
Good game, but basic ports from the consoles. That's the verdict of the game review.
Okay.
That I'm linking to. Yeah. A lot of many racing games at the end of this year and next year. Also a lot of other racing games coming. So that's a thing.
Cool, excellent. I'm down with that. Says the guy who's still playing freaking Dirt 2 from like 2010. It's a good game. It's a really good game.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this, my friend, would be all the news I've got.
Well, that's also all the news that I've got.
Which are none.
Which is none, yes. Nothing that we can talk about live in front of people.
All right.
Let's go and talk to Project Motor Racing.
Exactly.
Pew.
Fernando Mojino, senior social media manager, and as you can learn during the interview, he also used to be part of EA for Project Cars 3.
That's right.
And the other one is the PR manager, Alex Martini.
Yes.
Those were the two that we spoke to.
Okay.
That's it.
So let's talk to them.
So, today we have another two guests, and it's kind of a mix of a return and also for the first time, because you both are from the develop studio Straight 4, which actually consists of people that originally were Slightly Mad Studios, right?
Well, there is a mix of the old guys from Slightly Mad and going all the way back to Simbin.
Right.
But we're also mixed in with a lot of new talent and young guys and stuff. So it's kind of like, it's a mix of all kinds.
Right. So, yeah. But anyway, part of the team is from Slightly Mad Studios, at least from what I've read. And in the flesh, we have Alex Martini, who is PR and Fernando Mortijo, who is social media. Social.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I butchered the name. Hopefully not.
I heard worse. Trust me.
You had verse. Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. Well, so welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Thanks for coming. Yeah, and we will be talking about Project Motor Racing, which is actually, I would say, a spiritual successor to Project Motor Cars. Would you agree or disagree here?
If you mean by Project Cars, not really. It's I think that there's an assumption that it is, but everything is very different, right? So the engine is a completely new engine. We're based on the Giants engine, which is obviously they do the Farming Simulator series and franchise and whatnot. So everything is pretty new. I mean, in fact, everything is completely new. So we've had to restart essentially from scratch. So spiritual successor, I guess, maybe, but not really, because we're aiming for a much more simulation this time around, even though Project Cars is obviously simulation. But we have a different goal for this one, which is a little bit more elevated in terms of simulation.
I guess it depends who you ask. I mean, I played all three, but I know that Project Cars 1 and 2 was more simulation based, and the third one was more arcadey. And I guess the sim racing community sees this as the new star on the horizon, and it's quite interesting. As you mentioned, it's using the farming simulator engine, which is quite interesting because you would think, what have trucks and riding on the farm to do with racing games, you know? I mean, there is a speed difference there, you know?
Obviously, you've never raced a tractor.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, a Porsche tractor is the same as a 911. No, I mean, it's taken a lot of work to get to where we are, but the engine is good. The engine is great. It's a big surprise. I think for people to see that a farming simulation engine, but it's an engine. And actually, it's funny if you do some research on the farming on the Giants engine itself. It actually started life not as a farming simulator. It actually started life as basically a broad engine. So it's always been there. It's just we've used it for a different purpose. But the engine is pretty multi-purpose as far as I understand.
Why did you decide to go for the farming simulation engine? Why didn't you decide to make something new from the ground up?
So the evolution is I guess quite a simple one. Once we were bought out by EA and Codemasters and that whole situation evolved, we no longer had access to our old engine, the Madness engine. So the physics engine had to be rebuilt from scratch. And at that point, obviously, we had to decide what engine we actually wanted to put that on top of. And so we could have gone the usual route, which, you know, I don't want to name names, but we already know what the usual route is. Or we could have found something more interesting. And I think with Giants, we found something that was right up our alley, in terms of our partnership with them, in terms of their interest in us, and the way we could actually develop this in tandem, which has been really, really interesting. So I think all in all, it's been a challenge, but I think long term it's also interesting. And of course, the Giants engine does give us exposure to being the first sim racing game, if you want to call it that, on console and PC to be able to be moddable, which for us is massive. And for us to be able to actually offer mods on console is something that we're really, really stoked about. And I hope that the community will embrace it as well.
Yeah. I mean, as we have Fernando in the call, how did the community see so far your plans on Project Motor Racing? Can you talk about that? I mean, Project Cars has always been close to the community, as far as I know. So, what's your approach there?
I can tell you they want to eat me alive. with enthusiasm. The reception has been quite wonderful to watch from the beginning. Um, Alex brought me into the team shortly after the announcement, and since then I've had the opportunity to watch the community grow and their sentiment evolving over time. Every time we launch a new trailer, they just burst with even more enthusiasm. Um, Again, they make connection to Project Cars quite a lot, given our history. But we try to reinforce that this is a new beginning. So set your expectations correctly to what this can be. Um, One very fun moment I think of is when we released our Gamescom trailer, where we used, well, we didn't, our composer did, Stephen Bastine. He's the one who made the music for it. And he remixed one of the old tracks called Spa, and people immediately recognized it. And that was probably the most recurring comment on that video. And it shows that our community has grown with us. You know, they know our history, they know where we come from and what we're trying to achieve. And they've been very welcoming and supportive of that. And I'm trying to give back to them as much as they give to us.
Interesting that you mentioned that, because that Gamescom trailer was exactly the trailer where I told AJ we have to invite those guys and talk to them, because this is massive, and it's incredible. Also, Alex, you mentioned it's one of the first sim racers also being moddable on consoles. I've also read that it will be one of the few sim racers that actually tries to mimic a full-fledged physics engine on consoles, which hasn't been done before. From what I've read about Project Cars and the sim racers before, consoles always were an afterthought when it comes to physics engines, and they were always a bit watered down. I don't know how much you can tell us.
Let's talk about the physics engine itself, because
Exactly,
you're using the giant like the rendering engine, the engine from Farming Simulator, but the physics engine is something that you made in house. It's your own.
Correct. So there's two parts to that question. The second part being the in-house physics engine, which is actually called Hadron, and that is pretty much built from the ground up, because obviously, and that's pretty much AJ and Ben Ponford and all those guys who are. I can't actually have conversations with those guys because it starts off in some sort of language which I kind of understand, and then loops off into some weird stadium. So they're pretty smart, and so that's their engine. In terms of console versus PC fidelity, it is the same, yes. So we are going to be crossplay, which means that the physics have to be the same across both. And so that's been quite a challenge as well, right? But consoles are where they are now. We're not in 2017 anymore, and consoles can do a lot of work, which is so it's not impossible to do that, which is great news, I think, for the sim racing community as well, because we're going to start seeing some new faces. People from console will finally get a chance to actually compete against the guys in PC world, and we can actually have some really nice competitions. So the ranked online is something we are seriously looking forward to.
Now, there's been a bit of, consoles are starting to reach parity, like kind of as you just mentioned. They're able to
Yes.
do heavier loads. Has it been easier really to you would think that it would be easier to develop for console because you know exactly what the hardware is going to be. So it's like we can cram it into whatever that requires, whereas a PC can be all kinds of things. How has that been your experience?
I don't want to talk for the, as I said to you, talking about the physics guys is not the easiest thing in the world, because I haven't got a clue what these guys do. Seriously, they don't even. I've tried really hard, because I'll end up writing the blogs about physics, and I kind of try and then I have to go back 15 times. So what does this actually mean? Can you explain this in English? Seriously, I'll end up ChatGPTing it. It was like, ChatGPT, can you make this into English? Even ChatGPT gets confused. But essentially, no, I think we started life looking at PC. That's where we started, and then we've gone to the console. because I think that's pretty much our history as a studio, and it's pretty much where a lot of the studio kind of cut their teeth. And so for us to go from there to console was easier than for us to go from console to PC. I think I'm correct in saying that.
Cool.
And the Giants engine, obviously, it's taken a lot of work for us to get to this point with the Giants engine. So we are quite excited to see, that the community actually gets hold of the thing just to see that it's. But yeah, it's the Hadron engine is complicated, and developing it has been quite interesting from a handling perspective. As you're watching the game kind of progress and progress. I mean, I remember about 16, 17 months ago, I couldn't actually get the game. The game was not even running on my Thrustmaster. I mean, that's how bad it was. It was just like, why is it not running? And then, and it's sort of this development as you go through. And then, about a year ago, you start racing the cars, and it's good. I mean, we'll see how the community actually reacts to it. But we're pretty we're optimistic. We're quietly optimistic about what we have.
Interestingly, when I watch YouTube videos from sim racing experts, one thing that is always mentioned is actually how tight the Xbox controller, for example, controls are, because normally sim racing would concentrate on wheel support, but it looks like Project Moto Racing stands out in also making sure that you can control the car somewhat tight on a controller. So if you are on a console, you don't need to get yourself a wheel gear, I would say.
Fernando is our gamepad specialist. I mean, he sucks,
nice.
but
yes, I was going to answer that. So I've done sim racing for many years.
Okay.
I used to think that being on a wheel automatically makes you faster, but that's not true. It's still a learning curve, and the same can be said to play with a controller, with a gamepad. The only benefits of it is that you have your controls buttons more close together, so they're more comfortable. But it really comes down to one own individual skill, regardless of the method of input. And if you can master that, then you're set. And so, what I've seen the devs do, and every day there's a new build that I test and play around with, because my wheel is on my cupboard. I can't be bothered to take it out. It takes too much space. So I just plug my controller and do a few laps. And like Alex said, there was a time where I thought, well, this is not very good. But ever so gently, it kept getting closer and closer to that point where it felt really, really good. To the point where it gave me enough confidence to take a Porsche GT3 car around the Nordschleife. And I was fine with it. I didn't struggle. I knew my lines. I knew what the car was doing to me. I could feel the grip slipping. I knew where to push, where to hold back. And that was all just through the controller. And when I try it with a wheel, I still feel those same feedback from the car to my hands. And so I feel like it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen on ranked multiplayer, with crossplay. Because honestly, I don't think there is any advantage between platforms or peripherals. It's down to the driver, their own individual skills.
Having said that, we do not have any alien level racers in the studio who use the gamepad, and we don't have that in the FTP either. We have a couple of guys who are pretty fast, but the jury's out whether somebody on a gamepad, the best on the gamepad versus best on wheel. I mean, I would be kind of sad if the gamepad was as fast as the wheel, because my whole setup here cost me about $3,000.
Yeah.
So I would be really depressed to know that if I just bought like a $50 gamepad, I would be as competitive. I would be a little bit sad, but let's see how it works out.
I mean, I play with both, and I think it depends on the kind of game. I mean, if you have a wheel, you have to turn the wheel. And as I said, Fernando, with the gamepad, the way of moving with a stick can be shorter. So it's kind of a different kind of input. So I guess reflection time depends a bit how well you are with turning or turning
as long
a
as
wheel.
it's not like the old, like the racing games from like the 80s and stuff, where you're driving a car with a stupid joystick and it's just that was
Right.
the worst. That's
You
the
say
absolute
that,
worst.
but if you go back to, I mean, I don't want to date myself, but if you go back to the glory days of Grand Prix Legends, for instance, there was a Finnish guy called Gregor Hutu who, and I know, I'm 99% sure that I'm right. He used to use a combination of pedals and that joystick that you just showed me. Well, he actually had a flight joystick, so it was a little bit more like updated. And that's how he actually used to race. He used to actually steer with the joystick and he, and throttle and pedal. That was the way. And he was the fastest guy in the world for like half a decade. Literally nobody could touch this guy. And that was his thing. So maybe that's the key. Joypad plus pedals.
Maybe, yeah.
But to touch up on what you said about steering with a wheel and a joystick, you have to understand there's also other inputs, throttle, brakes, says a lot of how you control the car. And although I do agree that flicking a joystick is quicker than turning a wheel, the precision is not the same. Even if the game
Right.
is at a level that allows you to have that precision, you still have to be very assertive on the position you point at the car. For example, myself, if I'm playing a game that's circuit based, like our game, I would prefer a wheel so I can have more precise inputs. But if I play a rally game, I prefer a controller because I can counter steer much quicker, where the precision is not as relevant. So again, I still
Right.
believe that it depends on one's individual skill and finding that edge, um, which I think is something in common with professional race drivers, where you go around the track and every lap you push a little bit further, you brake a little bit later, you turn a little bit later as well, try to find the sweet spot of the apex, and that's what you do. The more laps you do, the more comfortable you become at it.
So yeah, just putting my PR hat on. The answer is we've worked very hard to try and get the gamepad working because we know that crossplay means a lot of new players will be coming to the gamepad, and we need to have that right. And it has to be a point where these guys feel that they could actually race against guys at the wheel. Otherwise, what's the point of it?
Right.
Right. Will there also be an option to disable crossplay if you don't want to participate in that?
I think, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. I would imagine that in social races, the answer would probably be yes. I'm not 100% sure. But obviously, ranked online is ranked online. So, ranked online is something that we control. And that obviously is always going to be crossplay. I think when it comes to, custom lobbies or whatever, I do not know if you can or if you can't control what. But I do know you can control, for instance, assists and all that kind of stuff. You have complete control over that. But whether you can decide on what kind of peripherals people use, I've never even tested that, so I don't really know the answer.
Never mind, we will find out. I mean, now that you mention it, Fernando, that it depends on the kind of racing you do, whether you like steering wheel or the gamepad more. I mean, Project Cars was always known to allow racing all kinds of, well, racers that you wanted to race, from kart to indie whatsoever, and I guess with Project Motor Cars you will also go somewhere similar, going in multiple directions. I mean,
Well,
I've read, for example, that you secured some licenses already
did we?
for some.
Who snitched? Now, we're currently focusing more on GT racing. That's the basis. That's the one thing we want to nail down. And once we feel more comfortable with that, then we can potentially start exploring other classes. What those classes would be, that's up to the dev team to decide. Um, but I'm a car fan first, then a motorsport second, and to see the selection of cars we have right now, it just blows my mind. Every time I open a game, I'm just presented with this selection of unicorns that no other game has. And so I'm quite personally, on a personal note, I'm quite happy with the car selection that focuses on GT racing because it's my favorite type of racing. And if it comes to a point where we can expand classes, we will. But also to remember that we have mod support. So who's to say some person in our community has the time and dedication to rewrite the whole thing and introduce a new class? We most likely welcome that.
Yeah, the part of the idea behind the game was to introduce these classes. So we have 13 classes. Three of them are spec, so one car. But what we try to do is, as much as licensing will allow us, we've tried to bring as many of those particular cars into their class. So that's basically the thing. The reason why it's called Project Motor Racing is because we are pretty much dedicated to doing racing. That's our thing. We don't want to do road cars right now. We don't want to do supercars. What happens with modding, as Fernando correctly says, is none of our business. And I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of content that's going to be available. But for us, our focus, and even if you look at the first year season of DLC, it's all racing cars. There is absolutely nothing else but racing cars because it's fun. Racing cars are fast, and they're made to actually go fast, right? So it's kind of cool. And we're not, I think not to be dismissive because people enjoy what they enjoy, but I think a lot of people in the studio are very much motor racing fans, and we just, if you want to tell us that we want to go and race simulated SUVs, for instance, we would probably not be that excited. It's just, people are just interested in what they're interested in. I think as a studio, we really are sort of motorsport people. I don't know why. It's just that I think we all gravitated to the same thing for some reason.
As a statement to that, whenever I play a new game from or other genres, the first thing I do is map out my route to the earliest race car. Because I've been playing games my whole life, and I've done the whole thing where you start with a little shit box and evolve into a race car. I just want to get to the race cars right away.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look in the genres of racing, there's general two types, as I said, sim racing and arcade racing. And especially if you look in the arcade racing world, there's a lot of turmoil recently. I mean, a lot of games that came out recently in the racing genre were very, very successful. For example, Test Drive Solar Crown was not really a good success. And even as you mentioned earlier, EA with their Formula One, it's, I don't know. So I guess now with Project Motor Racing, you are coming at the right moment. So to have like a new spark of hope for something better.
Yes,
I
I agree
think,
that
yeah,
the genre was going through a drought for the past
Yeah, exactly.
decade or so. But it's good to see the genre itself getting sparked with new life and new games coming to it. Um, I know you previously touched up on Formula One. I previously worked with that team before joining this one, and so I know what they try to achieve there, and they are dead focused on replicating the sport best they can within certain limitations of the licensing. And as much as they would love to do something else, that's not what the licensing is about. So obviously,
Right.
that's where our game comes in. It gives more variety to the genre, more choices, and the more games of this type there is, the better it is for the community.
for sure.
Yeah.
And we are not obviously, um, when you do when you first start on creating, a new franchise or a new game or however you want to say it, one of the first things you do is you kind of decide who you're making this thing for. And I think it's the same for everything. Whether it be a
Target
podcast or whether you're
audience.
writing
Yeah.
a book or whether you're making a movie, one of the first things you do is to say, okay, well, who am I actually making this for? Doesn't mean that you're going to make it for those people, but you always have them in the back of your mind. And for us, this has always been the sim racing genre, right? It hasn't been arcade. And also, when you look, at what an arcade game would want, we wouldn't necessarily have a lot that would interest them. We have great cars, and we have great racing, and we have great ranked online racing. So those are the good things. But obviously, there are other things that wouldn't necessarily appeal. So we'd love for them to play our game because we think it's accessible enough for them to play it. But it's not something, it wasn't the audience that we had primarily in mind. For us, it's always the same audience that we've been making games for since, 2004, whatever it was. Actually, it started off in 1999, as far as I know. So a lot of the studios have been around for 26, 27 years, and it's always the same audience, which is why sometimes they love us and sometimes they hate us because they know us so well that we're not exactly new to the genre, right?
Yeah, it's quite interesting that there's also a mashup between old team and new team. As I said, Fernando, yes. you came from EA and the Formula One team, kind of, and our last guest, where we mentioned Project Cars 3, which actually was more arcade, was actually Joe Barron, who is now part of EA. So it's kind of it's weird how that
we
all
are quite
shifted.
a small world.
Exactly.
It's a small world. But
sim racing is a very small world. People tend to go. I mean, I don't want to tell any tales, but if you go and look at who created, just for instance, the weather component on a different sim that I'm not going to even mention, and just look at their Moby Games credit and see where they actually work for. It's just the nature of this thing that people just sort of like swap around in studios because it's small.
And to come full circle, I actually started with Project Cars 3. That was my first game on the industry. It was a trial by fire, I'll admit, in hindsight. But that was what kicked off to work in the industry. So I did Project Cars 3. Then I joined EA, the Formula One team. And about 4 years and a bit later, I'm back with the same crew under a different name.
It's interesting, yeah. I mean, now what interests me, even though you two guys, obviously you are sim fans, you're not much into arcade racing. Do you anyway look around you? What is elsewhere? I mean, for example, Screamer is coming out from Milestone next year. That's also a big IP from 1995. So, that is my childhood game series next to Need for Speed that I grew up with, and of course there were the Grand Prix series from Jeff Cremont, which is also very famous. So, do you look what is around you, and
yes,
do you have an opinion about that? I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, part of, as you know, and I'm sure you guys have done the same thing. I mean, as I was saying earlier about you kind of realize who you're making. Not only do you realize who you're making games for, but obviously you look at what other people are doing as well within the space, right? And actually, it's kind of funny because if you see all the releases that are happening in the next month in sim racing, I mean, from early access to actual games, there's a lot going on, and everybody's kind of landed up on the same trajectory, and you kind of know why, because that's just the way marketing works, and you kind of think, okay, well, who's going to blink first? So for me and the way on our marketing side, we always looked at the sim racing because that we always thought was as our big competition. But I know that our game director is obviously always looking at other games just to see what we can bring in, because a lot of Project Motor Racing is also looking back at things. And it's funny you should mention about Grand Prix, etc. There are parts of the game that were inspired from going back 20, 25 years, which is kind of weird in a way, because when you've played these games, and you're right, a lot of those old games are actually great for simple reasons. Gameplay was really great. because they didn't have gimmicks. And it's like movies, right? In the old days, they didn't have CGI, so the plot was more important and the acting was more important. But if you go back to the gaming world and you look at all the games from the 1990s and the early 2000s, and you see how we've actually done it, some things are really great, and people kind of, for some reason, just forgot. And it's like, oh well, what happened to that concept? Everybody loved that concept, right? So maybe we should kind of look at why that concept actually worked. And so that's how you sort of move on, is by looking forward and by looking back as well. But I don't really look at arcade games simply because it's not really our audience. I know Fernando is a fan, though, so I'm sure he's
Yes,
has a different
I
view on
I
this
am
whole
a
thing.
I'm a fan of the racing genre as a whole, regardless
Oh,
of how
okay.
it's packaged to me. You can give me a super hardcore sim or a handheld racer. I love the genre entirely. It's been my favorite genre since I stopped playing games. And when you mentioned Screamer from Milestone,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that myself. If I was to bring an older game from that era, for me it would be Spy Hunter.
Oh,
That's
Okay.
one game I want to see revitalized.
wow.
But like Alex say, we take inspiration from all games that are out there. Um, Officially, they are our our competition, but also we're all friendly rivals. Because like we said, this is a small world here where we
Hmm.
take inspiration from each other. Uh, but ultimately, we want to win. We want to be the ones that sit on top. So it's a constant evolving thing that we do where we keep tabs on the community sentiment, on the landscape of the genre, see who does what at what time for what reason, how did they get that, how did they do that, and then we just start working backwards on how we can take inspiration from it.
Hmm.
Actually, Fernando does make a good point about, I think sometimes when you read the social comments and you go on social media, I think sometimes the community will actually be more militant towards certain studios than the actual studios, because we all get along, right? We all
Yeah,
know each other. I mean,
you're right.
this
Yeah.
is like, we just came off Sim Racing Expo, and it was like meeting old friends, right? It's like we're rivals, but it's like we're all in the same. And there's an understanding that the better all our games are, the more people will come and play sim racing, the bigger the net is, and the more successful we all will be. Right? And having gone to the expo, and I've been around, as I said, I've been around since like 1926. And having seen the expo this year, I mean, it just blew me away. Just the hardware and all the different companies that are there now. And, if I don't know if you guys know what the landscape was 25 years ago, but even getting a real world racer to talk to you because you had like a sim racing thing was like, well, what's this thing? What is it, a game?
Yeah.
And now, of course, they're all there, and everybody is like using this to actually it's gone so far, and it's so like it's really cool to see where we've actually gone. So yeah, but not okay. Sorry, Fernando.
Yeah, yeah. No, and speaking about talking to like the racers and whatnot that in the past would not necessarily have talked to you. You've gone to like the manufacturers and stuff to have the handling of the cars sort of verified and make sure that you're giving like an authentic experience.
Yes.
And what was that? How did that work? How was that like?
How does that work? It works by us. For instance, we have something called the Factory Driver Program, which is where we brought in a lot of the community, but also a lot of drivers from real world teams and real world drivers, many of whom we can't mention because they're there just because they enjoy racing, but we can't use them for promotional circumstances, or we're not going to. But their feedback obviously is really important. I mean, you just take a guy like Ben Collins, for instance. I think there is a constant pushback between our handling team and real world drivers also, for instance, because but it's better now than it was, let's say, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was difficult to trust an actual racer. Well, actually, no, going back maybe 15 years. Because you just don't know. Because when they're driving, they're feeding forces that you're not feeding in a simulation. So when they say to you, boy, this car is oversteering, and you try it, and you think, geez, no, not even close. And you need to try and understand where they're coming from. They don't feel it anymore. So their experience is not the same. Now is a different story because these guys have all grown up on simulation. So their feedback now is verifiable. If one of these guys, like you look at Max Verstappen, who's basically,
Right. Prime
if he's going to
example.
come to you and tell you, listen, and it's not that he's working with us because he's not, but I'm just saying, it's an example. If he comes to you and says to you, your car is just not doing what it's supposed to be doing, you're listening because you're like, I know this guy. He's done both. He's verifiable. So that's important for us, is to try and get real world racers to actually like what we're doing, and also the feedback from them to actually understand what things are actually happening in a car. For instance, like Ben Collins at the Sim Racing Expo sat there for about a good 45 minutes talking to one of our handling team and explaining to him how tires actually warm up. And it really was, I mean, you'd think it's really boring, but it was really fascinating. The way he was actually explaining the way you actually warm a tire up and what happens to a tire at Le Mans is a really fascinating thing. And you don't get this except from guys that have actually done it. And then you try and go back and you try and reproduce it. And the great thing about having a guy like Ben Collins, all these guys, is when you try to reproduce it, he'll come back to you and say, "Oh, that's better," or it's absolute like crap. And so that's really important for us. At the end of the day, the sim racing community is going to look at certain sims and make their own decisions about what they believe is realistic or not. And I think over time, that realism has changed, right? If you go back to Grand Prix Legends, for instance, where we all thought that driving 1967 cars was like, I don't know, escapades on ice. I mean, it was great for the time, but if you go back now and you look at it, you think, boy, that's not. But that's how we kind of grew up, right? And then we kind of get different sensations and different feels, and I think we're getting close to the point of realism now. I think we're very close, and I think the difference between most of the simulators are not that much anymore. And I heard not so long ago one of the handling team explain it. Actually, the sim racing explaining it, saying, the different sims now. I mean, we're talking the simulator, the big guys, is essentially like the difference in tires in motorsport. In that some tires are just going to suit some drivers more than others. And if you think about it, when you look at the way tires actually work through, like Formula One, for instance, right? When they change the tire evolution, for instance, some drivers just go from, Sebastian Vettel being a perfect example, obviously they changed the rules of the cars as well, but they went from untouchable to, gee whiz, what the hell happened to this guy, right? And I think that's a simulation as well. Some people just get along with different engines. But I think in terms of fidelity, we're all really close now. I mean, I don't think any simulator is like a million times better than anything else. It's just the way it works now. Physics is physics, right?
Yeah, you mentioned the G-forces and stuff that the actual drivers will experience while they're in the car. One of the things that you're doing in this is you're calling it living cockpits, where there are there's things that go on. You can see the G-forces. Did you talk to drivers about how they experience this?
Correct. And the good thing is, and the bad thing is, it's difficult to replicate, which is why we make it, you can turn it up, you can turn it down, you can do whatever you want with it. But it is about simulating how everything is moving within the cockpit and with the head is moving and everything else. So, which is important, right? Mm-hmm. I think, it's a difficult one to replicate. And I think it's got a lot to do with force feedback as well, and what's coming through your force feedback. And it's a complicated business, right? Because you're trying to model something that is incredibly physical, which is real world racing, into something which is completely static, which is you sitting in your rig or your cab. And it's just really, really difficult to. So the guys who do it are really smart. And I don't even know how they even, but it feels good to me. Even though I do tend to turn down a lot of the replicated G simply because I'm old, and I need things to be a lot more static to go faster. Not that I'm going that fast anymore.
Right. Yeah, I remember playing a racing game from not even that long ago where, you hit an obstacle and you do 7 barrel rolls, bounce off a wall, and land back down, and everything stays perfectly static in that cockpit. And it's like, I don't think that it would still look like this after I would have done that in real life.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, but I mean, it's difficult. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to bring up the thorny topic of VR because we're working on it and we're not going to have it for launch, obviously, because it's not prime time ready yet. But I've noticed people who go from static to VR, for instance, are actually fast friends of mine. Actually, do find speed, and it just really annoys me because I don't actually use VR, and so I need to start VR. But the idea is, if you can actually look into the apex of corners, for instance, it gives you it's an advantage. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. So yeah,
Yeah.
this is
You
trying to
mentioned
replicate the
VR.
real with simulation is really quite complicated.
Right, right. You mentioned VR, and whilst you're not working on that, I'm curious whether you have given any thought, and it maybe not. I'm trying to find what it is exactly. There is a technology I've seen a few times that is fairly newish, where it uses your webcam to kind of track your eye movement, and
Oh
then the
yeah,
things on the
it used to
screen.
be called Track IR at one point. I don't know
Okay.
what it's called now. I know. I think I read something in the development team. Maybe Fernando will remember. I think we had some discussion about this on an email just a couple of days ago. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I know that VR is really our focus, and getting that as soon as we can. But the problem with VR for us, um, and going back for once, I'm going to talk about one of our old games, which I really don't know. I talk about Project Cars 2, for instance, was for me the best VR experience. Just for me, I'm just saying, because that's just the way I see it. And so for us, the bar is actually really high. And we can't get this one wrong. So it can't be one of those, yes, here's VR, and by the way, we're going to make it better. I think that would not go down well with our community. And so we'd rather just get this right before we actually bring it up, essentially. That's where we are with VR.
Cool, excellent. The thing now for that is called the Beam Eye Tracker, is what I've been seeing.
Yes,
But
I read something about. Sorry, I don't recall. God,
yeah,
I sound like I'm in Congress. I don't recall that.
But I think it's important to highlight that we're always looking for new ways to experience the game. Um, the dev team could implement whatever peripheral they so desire, given that they have enough time and resources to do it. And
right.
Ultimately, we have a game to launch. We have deadlines to meet. Otherwise, it will stay in development forever until it's pitch perfect.
Right.
But just know that the dev team is incredibly passionate about what they do, and they're always finding new solutions to new problems. And given enough time and resources, they would get wherever they want to get.
Yeah, Fernando does make a good point about we do actually have a launch day.
Yeah, I mean,
and one of the
in a
things,
month already, So
Less.
yes, well, it's 21 days, I believe.
yeah, see.
But we haven't gone into early access, right? So it's not as if we're going out there and going in for a 2-year development cycle on early access and getting the development funds as we're going through that, right? We're very old school when it comes to it. And for us, we don't. It's just the way we do it. And so for us, the launch is the launch, and then we make the game better. Old school way, which I think sometimes is kind of cool because at least you're playing a game and not getting early access gives you a lot of alibis to really draw things out. There's some games that have been in early access for like 8 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just draws.
That's right.
Some
right.
never
But
leave early access.
There's no end because people keep coming in, and the people who are in are already in, whatever. And I think listen, everybody does it differently. I'm not criticizing anybody because, as I say, people just do things differently. You could also say early access is good for feedback. If you're getting the feedback, for us, we did the FTP for that same reason because we can see the value of that, of getting a game out to your community early. That's really valuable. Getting feedback from your community, even if it's a lot of feedback. And to be honest, I don't think. I mean, even with our limited FTP of people who both came in because they wanted to be in there, and people who we brought in, even in that extent, it's not like 100% are contributing, right? People are people. So, yeah. But yes, early access is not something that we do, so that means that we do have deadlines to hit, and so
Right.
you need to make decisions about what's this is good, and we move on and we work on making things better. That's just
But
game development.
but I would say there are two kinds of deadlines. The deadlines where the game is in a workable
Yes, of course.
state,
Yeah,
and
of
there
course.
are deadlines where it's like, holy cow, why did they release it this way? You know?
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we are hopeful that Project Motor Racing is going to be ready for prime time. I mean, I think it is. I think it is, and there's obviously no, I think it's good, but I mean, I think there was a preview that came out today on was it Overtake? For Overtake, right? Yeah, it was Overtake. And they have not even not our latest, obviously. They're probably about I think their build is probably about 2 weeks. A lot of that because obviously what the build is that gets built, so called, is all the stuff that's coming in and it's already in and the stuff that's in. I mean, there's so many builds going around. I don't even understand what's going on.
Right, right.
I
Yeah.
just use one build because I'm the stupid guy and that's it. That's the only one. But yeah, so everything is happening concurrently at the same, and things are happening also. Yeah, and they
Yeah.
were pretty happy with a lot of the stuff there. So we're not panicking. Put it that way. We're not panicking.
I know the overtake guys. Yes, I'm in touch with them. Yeah, they
Yeah,
are
they're good guys. They really are good
they
guys.
are the experts definitely in the sim
Very
racing.
much so, yeah. And I
Yeah,
mean, they came back with some feedback or whatever. But as I say, it's not our launch game. They will get the launch game for review in probably a week or two. And many other people will too. So yeah. But yeah, no, we're as I said to you, we're quietly confident.
nice, nice. It's also interesting because the racing genre also still has holes. You know, for example, IndyCar racing. I guess the last game that I remember on PC was IndyCar Racing 2 from Papyrus, 1996.
Yeah.
And there's never been ever a specific dedicated IndyCar racing ever since. And I saw in the recent years that the license was traveling around certain studios, but nobody came up with a definite solution to the problem. So that's kind of surprising, and I wonder if you, as you two are big in the sim racing world, do you have an opinion about that, or I don't know. I mean, now that I
I
have the chance to ask you guys.
I could tell you a couple of stories about that license, but I would probably get into a lot of trouble, so I won't. But actually, I don't think. I mean, IndyCar, by the way, IndyCar Racing was great, and IndyCar Racing, I think two was absolutely great, and I even bought the DLC, the track DLC. I don't know if that's how old I am. There was a IndyCar game after that, by the way, made by Microsoft. And I think it was made after IndyCar, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was actually really good. Jesus, I can't remember. If you Google it, you'll actually see what it was called. It was actually really, really great cover too.
Was
And
it for
that game,
PC?
I swear to God, had
Okay.
the best curbs of any sim ever. The curbs were just absolutely amazing. The rest of the game was kind of okay, but it was called something simulator, racing simulator, or something like that. It was meant to have been a franchise, I think, for Microsoft, like their flight sim thing, and it never actually kicked off. But yeah, no, the IndyCar race. I mean, the license has been around because it's kind of like the chalice of doom and poison, right? So I think that's essentially, it's kind of like the Temple of Doom. I don't. As far as I know, we're not doing it. As far as I know, it might be. I don't know. Fernando maybe knows something about it. He probably does actually.
I
But
can
he
say
would be a
something about
fool
that.
to
Yeah,
say anything.
I can say something about that. Also, note there was another IndyCar game by Codemasters, came out in 2003, 2004, something like that. So they've been around. But this goes back to what we were talking earlier about how this genre has evolved. It with it evolved as well the costs and the recognition, and licensing holders sometimes fighting among themselves to be present in the game. If you go back 20 or so odd years ago, I don't know the exact values, but buying a license probably cost you peanuts. Nowadays, we're talking a lot of zeros in a blank check. So it's not just a matter of get a license. First, you gotta have the right money. Then you gotta represent the licensing accordingly. You can't just do something willy nilly. And the, the license holders care a lot more about their brand now than they did 20 or so years ago. So they'll be a lot more involved and they'll want things to be done right. Um, as a segue from that, we were working closely with IMSA, uh, and they've been very, very kind to us and very supportive, helping us with a lot of things that we needed. Um, Me specifically, as I working on F1, I was working with FOM, and I see the contrast between the two license and where the liberties are and where the restrictions are for either. And so, yeah, again, like I said, things got more recognizable now and more expensive as to do as well. So even if you did get the license for something, you'd still have to be careful how you represent it because it could turn out badly, and then you lose a license, and then the license holders don't want to license the game to anyone else, and then it goes back a few steps. So it's the world of licensing of anything is extremely, extremely complex.
Yeah.
The IndyCar, obviously, if you recall, Project Cars 2, I believe, we did have the IndyCar license.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So we had a few cars in there. The game was called Precision Racing, Microsoft's Precision Racing, by the way. And if you've never played it, it's really worth playing if you like old games. It's really great. It was much better than people give it credit for. But yeah, I mean, so right now we are, and also for season one, it's all GT or prototypes and endurance racing. We don't have any plans to do open wheelers in the next season anyway. So until 2020. After that, I don't know. I haven't seen the other plans.
Well, I mean, there's always a chance for more seasons, more DLCs, or perhaps a Project Motor Racing 2.
I don't think that Project Motor Racing 2 will come out in 2027. So I don't think we're going to be able to turn it around in 2 years. So, because we are committed to this DLC, which is, as if you haven't seen it, it's 5 DLC for the year. And at the end of the year, we have a massive expansion pack as well, which is very much in line with with our publishers at Giants and our partners at Giants, who do very similar things with their farming simulation. So if you look at what they do with Farming Simulator and what they do with their expansion pack at the end of their first season, you'll try to understand what we're looking to do with ours. So a lot of work still to be done there. So yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a good use of like resources, because to put out a new version of the game every 2-3 years, back a few years ago when there were like major increases in computing power every year over year, it made more sense to do that. But now a game released today, I don't know is going to look that much better in 2027. But a game released today with new with new content that's released through the year.
No, I agree. I think the only difference, obviously, for us versus a few of our bigger competitors, and if you think about it, most of our natural competitors are not even on console, and we are, obviously, and we release everything at the same time. We are probably the only big sim racing game that actually does that, right? And so if you're looking at like 27, 28, we would expect definitely the PlayStation to have gone to their next, I would imagine, will be their next PlayStation, right? So for that would obviously mean a big, hopefully, an increase in performance for them. So that's why we would look at that. Yeah. But I mean, if you're only releasing on PC, as certain other products do, you don't even need a new game, right? You just keep on fighting.
Right.
Especially when you have modding.
But I guess consoles doesn't include the Switch 2, right?
The Switch 2 interests us because obviously it's interesting. It interests my daughter as well. because she wanted me to buy. Well, actually, it's funny. She came to me and she said, I'd like to get the Switch 2 because the new Pokemon came out. And she really, really liked the Pokemon, and she might have done something, not necessarily legal, so I'm not going to say what she did. And then we were looking at the actual price of the Switch 2, and it was in Swiss francs, it was like 470 Swiss francs, which is about $520, which is a nice chunk of change.
Yeah.
So the Switch 2 would be interesting for us, obviously, but I don't know. That's a development question. I wouldn't even know how we could port where we are now into the Switch 2. I have no idea what kind of performance that I just don't know.
I mean, if you look at the history of the Switch, especially Switch 1, there have been games ported to the Switch where people said it was impossible. So
yes, I know. No, I know. And my daughter has a Switch 1 and she loves it. So I'm a big fan. And so I would not be against it. I just don't know if you could do the kind of physics that we're doing on PC or but I don't know. I honestly don't even know how. I don't know. I'm not a developer, so I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be against it, by the way. I think it would be actually great. And I was, as I said to you, I was looking the other day at and I was looking at the racing games on Switch 2, and honestly, I mean, there's really not a lot. So yeah. From a marketing angle, it'd be great.
I mean, more platforms is more potential customers, right? Yeah.
And Giants obviously with their farming simulator on basically almost any platform, right? I mean they are.
Yeah, that's true.
Including the Commodore 64
and the Mega Drive and the Mega Drive.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. But obviously, it's a little bit different in terms of performance. But still,
that's true.
A little bit.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that the Mega Drive version was actually coded by one of the CEOs of Giants. So.
Oh, was it? Yes, no, I'm sure. Yeah, no, they're actually. It's funny. I actually live in Zurich, so I live in Switzerland. So I've been invited to their head office here in Zurich on numerous occasions. And they're actually a really good crowd of guys. I mean, they really are a really, really good group of people. And then they obviously have the publishing side in Germany.
Yeah.
And obviously I have to, on the off chance that they actually will listen to this, I have to like whine about them because we just always like battle because that's their publishing arm, right? So that's where their marketing division is. So that's who we argue with. But the developing side of it here, the corporate side here in Zurich, are just they're actually a good crew of people. I must say that, in terms of publishers and I think, it's a good relationship. We're still having a good relationship, but developers and publishers eventually will have arguments. But things are good. I mean, we have a really solid partnership and a solid understanding. Even though we have a lot of arguments, because it's natural, especially this time of things.
Of course.
It's a positive relationship. So, it's a good thing.
I can agree. Good people, yeah. So it's certainly going to be a good product, a good game. Now let me ask you, because I always ask the same to the farming simulators guys when we had those for the interview. Are you planning on a physical release?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes.
I think we're going to be in retail, absolutely. Don't know if PC is going to be retail. Maybe Fernando knows. I'm not sure. I know, obviously, on Xbox and PlayStation we will be. I don't know if we have a physical edition on PC or do we?
We do.
Actually don't know.
Actually,
We do.
according to last information that I have, we do have physical on all three platforms.
So there you go. So for 4 people who want to buy it, I mean, I don't even know what I actually haven't seen a physical PC game in like so long. It's kind of sad. Remember when they used to come in those big boxes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I miss those. I miss those boxes because they were just like after you bought 10 games, you had like this entire wow.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you are right there, Alex, in the way that most PC physical games are a box and then a digital code for Steam in the box.
What's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly. But with printed manual and an art book, so it's kind of a physical, but but if it comes with a DVD, it's mostly just a Steam installer on it.
Didn't something release it? They had like a USB stick with the game in it to install.
A limited
Yeah.
limited run games does that sometimes.
Oh, they do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's also, I believe I'm right, because I've seen it. They are in certain countries, for instance, in South America and Africa, as probably Asia, where I can't testify to the Asian side, but the African side, is that you can literally go into a phone, where you buy mobile phones or whatever, and the games are sold literally on a card. And you just basically take the card and scan the card, and that's the game, right? But there's no packaging or anything, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, the way the games are distributed now, it's a whole new world, right?
Yeah.
It's funny because we did discuss right at the start of the project, because obviously, I wanted to. I worked on I don't know if you guys ever saw the Project Cast 2, the art book on Project Cast 2. And so I worked on that, and obviously, and the idea was that we were going to bring out, again, I'm going to date myself. You guys remember Steve Smith, who did the GPL manual, the Grand Prix Legends manual? If you haven't seen the Grand Prix Legends manual, that is the best manual ever made for a sim racing game, by far, and it will never be bettered. Sorry, it's just the way it is.
Okay.
But we wanted to get Steve to actually do sort of a little. He's in his 80s now, I believe, and he lives out in Rochester, New York, and we actually wrote a book together, and he's an old friend. And we wanted to bring him just to make a couple of pages or whatever, but it wasn't right for this. We do have a manual, but it's a digital manual, and it's just about the game. So that's.
I see.
But if we make if the game is successful and we have a Project Cast 2 or 3, maybe we'll do another art book or something. That's really fun to work on. But yeah, we need an exclusive edition for that one, right? And we don't have it. So.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet, anyway.
I mean, now that many artwork is done AI, it's good to hear that there are still artists doing it with a human hand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know because I don't work for other studios, but I just hear rumors from other studios that have, and I'm not talking about our competition because I wouldn't know.
Right.
But I've just been, just looking around, and a lot of studios have basically, their artwork is basically coming from outside sources, or and we still have a lot of guys working on the studio, which is really nice. So a lot of the stuff is actually made by us, which is, I think, kind of cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that means in 21 days we will have a full game?
21 days, yeah, 21 days. Well, actually, it's 21 days and 2 hours, but okay, who's counting?
Awesome.
Which will be significantly less when this comes out. So anyone
Definitely.
listening to this,
Definitely.
it'll be the actual release date is the
November the 25th.
25th.
Yeah,
Yes.
But who's counting?
Yeah.
Not us.
We're completely calm, and yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, so where can people actually find more about the game and pre-order it, obviously?
Fernando,
Yes,
go on.
this is my expertise. So you can follow us on socials. Very cool thing about the way our website is designed is you can search Project Motor Racing, and the first hit is our website. And from there you can find our socials, whatever you prefer, or you can join our Discord server as well, where we hang out with the devs and have casual chats with the community. This is something I'm quite proud of, that our community has been able to keep up and make it a safe space for the devs to come in every now and then and have a chat, an in-depth discussion about how stuff is made, why did you do it this way and not the other way, and give an insight to the community on how things are done. If you do go to our socials, you'll see us posting all sorts of content to highlight our cars that we have in the game, which is my personal favorite thing to do in terms of social content, is showcase all the cool cars we have. A lot of games, what they do is they put all their cars together in one go and highlight just a few, but we're we're giving attention to each one individually, as much as our licensing allows us to. And so you will find us to do the occasional post where we pick a car and we tell you the history of this car. Alex here writes all our blog posts. He has a very fascinating way of carrying you a story about as you learn through the car. So it's not just a few paragraphs of stats and numbers. It tells you a story of how this car came to be and how it fought on the world's leading endurance races, and it's fascinating because I'm the one that has to post these on socials. I have to read them through them, and every time I learn something new about a car that I thought I knew everything about, and so it's something that I really, really enjoy sharing with the community. And the response is always very positive. They enjoy seeing the cars having their own dedicated spotlight. So yeah, follow us on social media, and you'll see all these cool things we're making. And if you want to chat with us, join our Discord.
Awesome.
I'm banned. I'm banned from the Discord. I'm in Discord. That's why it's a safe space, because I'm not invited.
Ooh.
Yeah. And where will the game be available for download or purchase, aside from your site?
So you can find us. You can find us on all the normal places: PlayStation Store, Xbox Marketplace, Steam, Epic Store as well. If you go to our website, I think, might be wrong, but you can actually get their own individual installer, independent from any launcher.
You can pre-order from projectmotorracing.com.
Yes.
You can pre-order from us, or you can obviously follow the links on the actual website, or obviously you can go wherever you want to go and buy it from your
Yes,
local
our website will direct you to whatever platform you desire to play the game in.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
We'll put links to all of that in the podcast description down there somewhere.
Yes, go and pre-order, because if you pre-order, wait, I need to get this right. You can save up to 30% on the DLC, which actually, by the way, jokes apart, but because we're new, it's actually a really good deal. So if you think that you might be interested, it's probably a good time to get onto it, because there's 5 DLC, right? Including my favorite, which we are obviously testing because it's obviously available, because it's going to be available on day one, which is the Group 5 pack, which is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, we're talking about the 1970s Cortinas and BMW.
Get the year one pass, and I'll save you up to 30%. As if you were buying them individually, saves you ahead of that. And while we're talking favorite DLC packs, my personal favorite is the one that comes, I think, right after Group 5.
You can't say anything.
Well, we already announced them.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Go on. But don't announce the cars.
No, of course not. I'm not going to say what's in it. That's the top secret information. You have to find out when you get to it. And again, it goes back to Alex writing these blog posts, because they're just wonderful. And I wouldn't want to spoil the surprise and show the history of these cars. But my favorite one is it comes after that. The Japanese cars, Super GT. It was really important to me to see this part of our game, because not many games have this class, this series. And when I saw this on our roadmap, I was, yes, that's my jam right
cool.
there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Faster than European GT3, but anyway. So anyway, that's part of. That's part of the nice thing about Project Motor Racing is that we have these really cool cars, and we've managed. I think when you look back towards just Project Cars, for instance, there was a lot of nice cars, but they didn't have any kind of rivals. And if you look at, it's funny because if you actually look at our logo, those are like 2 helmets, kind of an old helmet and a new helmet, kind of like facing off, because the part is racing, and what's racing? Racing, you got to compete against somebody. And so part of the whole idea was to bring these rivals together as much as we could. So, you get these classes and you build the class and you get as many cars as you can from that era. And Group 5 really works because it's the cars that really, really were part of, obviously not your guys, but if you're old as me, it really is a special part. You talk about cars that used to, I mean, red light at 10,500 RPM. Right? I mean, these cars are just absolute phenomenal cars.
I mean, it's
So, yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned age so often. I mean, my start with racing was actually Test Drive 1 in 1987. That is how
Holy
I
crap.
started racing, you know. So
I remember that.
yeah.
Was that the one that used to have that analog sound? It was like a Formula One. Did you ever play the one of the Formula One? Our Accolade. Did you remember the remote?
Yeah, the Grand Prix circuit from
That's
Accolade.
the one.
Yeah.
Wasn't that awesome?
1988. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's depressing.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, here in Europe, it's actually running a lot slower because we have 50 hearts, and in America it's actually it's running faster. And I always thought here in Germany, like, who is enjoying that? It's running so slow. But when I got myself an NTSC, a Commodore 64, I finally understood it's a lot faster on 60 hertz. So,
I had no idea.
Yeah. So the experience is totally
cool,
different. Yeah.
Oh, that was cool. You know, there used to be another game right about that time, and I think actually the Accolade, it might have been the Accolade, when you could actually build your own track. Do you remember that one?
Oh, that was a different game. It was not from Accolade, but I don't remember.
You could literally build your own track.
Yeah.
And this was like in the 1990s, like early 1990s, late 1980s. What happened to that idea? See, this is why, you know, when you go back and you start looking at that, imagine having like, you know, so that's like, you know, that's what I was saying. Sometimes when you look back at things and you think, boy, that was a really good idea. Why did that just like, when did that? And people just get bored sometimes, right? It's like, oh, yeah, we've done this. Let's move on. And then 20 years later, people look back and think, but geez, you know, that was actually the best fun, right? Why don't we try and look back at that and bring that back? And we actually have some ideas that we're going to, obviously, as we evolve, that are going to come in, which is not for launch, but will be pretty much, I think.
I mean, the thing is, you don't know what you miss until you don't have it anymore. You know, that's actually how it is.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. It's just it's and you know when Fernando talk about the blog post or whatever, for us it's also important to try and educate the whole new generation about what these cars were, right? Because I mean you know we have GT3, we have GT4, we have the LMDH from the IMSA, you know, so that we have all the new cars. But I think to a certain extent, you know, a lot of people don't know what the history of motorsport is because when you're young, you're kind of like, you know, even for us, right, when we were growing up, who remembers what racing was in the 1930s? Right? And so, and from 1980 to 1930 was pretty much from 1980 to now, right? So for kids who are playing now, they look back to 1980. It's like us in the 1980s looking back to the 1930s. Nobody knew who these guys were.
Exactly.
And so for us, it's also important to try and educate people and say, well, actually, these cars were really fast.
Exactly.
Probably faster than modern day GT3s in a lot of cases, like the GT cars, right? From the 2004 2005 season, they're actually faster than modern GT3s.
Yeah.
They are faster top speed wise and they are faster around a track wise. And that was 20 years ago. Right? And a lot of people don't even know what these cars were. And so for us to tell them what these kind of cars are is actually really important.
That actually reminds me of a little moment I had by doing my work. So to accompany these blogs, I take a whole bunch of screenshots of the cars. So all the screenshots you've seen out there from PMR was taken mostly by me. And so to accompany these blog posts, I have to go take screenshots. And I had a moment when I was taking screenshots of, I think it was the Camaro GTO car. And I just saw how well the interior was modeled by our team. It was just a mess of wires on the dashboard and this steel frame with zero comfort. Just a little metal sheet where the tachometer goes, and I was just fascinated by the way it was modeled. And then it clicked in my brain: wait, people used to race these as it is.
Right.
And this, again, is where it comes in our blog post to educate people where how legendary these cars are in their heyday.
Right, and also, who cares about security, right? It was really dangerous back then.
Don't need airbags in that.
Yeah.
You know, we were at Silverstone about, I don't know if you guys had a chance to see our Roots trailer, which is on our YouTube channel. and we went to Silverstone with Ben Collins, and he spent the day running the Lister Storm GT, which is obviously part of the GT class. Um, and I remember when this car first rolled up, and you have in your imagination, you think, boy, this car has to be, and then you see this thing rolling up, and you think, good lord, it's basically it's I mean whatever, it's a fabulous car, right? I don't want to put any aspersions on anybody's racing car, but you look at it, and you think, it's just lightweight sheet metal, and there's one horrible seat in there, and the steering wheel is just like, and you look at inside, and it's you. And then you look at how these guys had. I mean, the engine is inside the cockpit, right? Because it's front engine, but it's actually front mid, right? So the engine's inside the cockpit, and they've got tinfoil over the piece that comes next to the driver's leg to try and keep the heat down, because drivers were actually passing out while they were driving this car. This is in 2006, not like in 1926, right? This is how these guys drove. And you look, and when you sit down, and Ben was actually sitting down, and he showed you how his legs are. And his legs are at about a 20-degree angle to actually get to the pedals, because the pedals are all the way to the right, because the engine is to the left. It's just fabulous when you see how these cars actually were, and just to understand that history, and bring that history to life, and actually being able to drive these cars, and not actually like be in danger, because they are actually like really scary.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point of the game, right?
Wow, that's true. Not die while you drive. Exactly.
It's a good idea. I tell you, no, these cars are scary, and the sound, holy crap! I mean, the sound of that V12 is just.
I think that's a good segue to give props to our sound team, because the sounds on PMR are incredible. When we released our first official gameplay video,
I saw that.
With Celine, there was a lot to take in, and a lot of feedback was given. But the number one thing people like was the sound. They were just in awe.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I every time I jump in a game, I have to take a few laps, because I just love hearing every little detail of the sound.
The sound design is amazing.
And it's an interesting thing with nowadays, because the common people reference point is a YouTube video they saw, and they think that's what a car is supposed to sound like. They forget all the little rattles and the gearbox winding up, or when you go drive over gravel or pebbles and you hear it hitting the chassis. All those little things add to the senses, and you have to understand that when you're inside the car with a full helmet gear and earplugs to not damage your ears, the sound is different than what you hear passing by on a racetrack.
True.
So I do recommend using the cockpit view, specifically because I think it's the most visceral and raw sound the car can make.
True.
And that's a shout out to Stephen Basted and his team. Interesting enough, Stephen was Ian Bell's first employee. That's the story that I got, because Ian started many years ago when he first started messing about with mods or whatever, and then they evolved into making GTR or whatever. And Stephen was actually the first guy to come on board on that whole project, so he's been around for a million years. It's still all his, him and his team. They're amazing. And obviously he does the soundtrack. And that's another thing that Project Motor Racing actually has, which a lot of other sims don't have. We actually have a soundtrack. We actually have a score, which we will be releasing before we actually release the game. And part of that, obviously, is the Gamescom trailer, the Spa, the remake of the famous Spa song, which is the Gamescom thing, which everybody went absolutely crazy about. I didn't even realize that he had such a following. But the sheer amount of comments about that tune on the Gamescom, I was like, holy crap! He's got like his own fan club. It's amazing.
I recognized it too.
Yeah, it was very cool. So we got a really nice soundtrack this time as well for the Sims. So we're looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Very, when you're in between menus and you hear Steven's work, it's always I don't know. I get kind of a little bit inspired. It's really cool.
It's true. He's very, very evocative.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he's great at I mean, he's number one at what he does. He really is.
Absolutely.
He's...
Awesome. I mean, with so much passion just from you two guys, it can't only. It can only be a good product, and it can't fail. That's my opinion.
Yeah. We will see. We will see how it goes. As I said, we are quietly confident. I mean, it's the first game, new engine, pretty new studio because, as I say, there's a lot of new guys in the studio. Obviously, a lot of older guys, or not older. Maybe that's the wrong word to use. More experienced guys, and obviously, so it's it's a new publisher. It's a new game engine. It's a new physics engine. It's everything is new, right? So and development has been 3 years or 2.5 years or whatever it's been. So we're confident, but we're also aware that there's probably going to be teething issues at the start. It's not going to be perfect. I don't think anybody makes a perfect game. I don't think anybody has ever made a perfect game.
Yeah.
But we're working really hard, and we're going to keep working really hard, and we think we have something. We think we have something good, and we think something good that's going to keep on getting better. But we are confident here. We're quietly confident. So let's just hope we hit the right beats, and let's hope the community find things to love about this, because a lot of people have put a lot of time and a lot of passion and a lot of knowledge and experience and hope in this product. And so, that's the only thing you can do, right? It's like your baby's coming out in 21 days. After that, there's nothing you can do. So, baby's either going to crawl or basically drown, I guess. So let's hope it crawls.
I mean, there always have been also examples where the start was horrible, but meanwhile it became a massive hit.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, the sim racing genre has always been difficult for, I mean, obviously not all games. There are certain franchises that have become huge, and when they announce, people just flock into them because they expect something. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily happen.
NASCAR, for example.
Yeah.
Exactly. But no, I mean, NASCAR's okay, whatever. But no, what I'm saying though, I think more importantly is that I think sim racers tend to, because we stick to one or two sims for so long, that we tend to want to wait to be convinced to go to the new one because of the time that we have to invest in getting good at a new sim. And so there's always, it's always a slow burn when it comes to sim racing. It's not like, shooter ups or whatever. Yeah.
You mean people who stick to iRacing, for example?
iRacing is iRacing, and they have a very, they have a good product. And and they've been around for, how long has it been? 2009, was it? 2010, somewhere around there. They've been around for a long time. And they've got a strong community, and they have a strong product, and people enjoy it, and it's good. That's what this is about, right? As I said to you, we don't look at it. We look at them as friendly rivalries, as opposed to, the more people that enjoy our sim, or the more people that enjoy our racing, the better for all of us. I mean, because at the end of the day, you do tend to also want to go and experiment in different things, right?
I mean, let's be honest. When Project Cars was shut down, the community was devastated. So now there is new hope.
Sad. Yeah, it was sad. It was sad when that actually happened. Yeah, it was pretty sad when that happened. But that's just, we live in, and that's what I was saying about this game is, a new game in 2025 that is not a franchise is also quite rare. You look around you and look at not only games, movies, books, everything is book 2 or part 3 or whatever, right? We're living in franchise world.
True.
And I have my own ideas, and I think it's a lot to do with nostalgia and a lot to do with people feeling comfort. And I think in moments when the world is going a little bit out of sync, people like to feel comfortable that they know what they're getting in terms of their And it's nice, like meeting an old friend for coffee. Hey, it's the second part of the friend. So when you're new, there's also that like, do I really want to start something new, or do I want to go and meet my old friend? So.
Right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for taking
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure having you on.